All right, we are here. Make sure we got all systems working. Looks like we're good to go. Throw it up in the chat that you can see and hear me so we can get started here. All right. Good deal. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me for Thought Leadership 3.0. Today, we're going to look at a different way to proceed with B2B thought leadership. Everybody is interested in getting their thoughts out there, sharing their ideas, gaining attention, gaining more trust from their audience. And the way that we've historically gone about it is a little bit outdated. So I think we all need a little bit of a better approach, a little bit of a more direct approach to our audience. And that's what we're going to look at today. This is something that we've been experimenting with a number of our clients and have seen great success with them. And just wanted to share it with the greater community, share it with everybody else, share it with y'all, so that you can also experience some of the success that they have been seeing. So without further ado, we will get started. I will tell you at the end of this, we'll have a little Q&A session. So hold questions till the end if you would. So let's start with an agenda. First and foremost, we're going to define what a 3.0 thought leader is, right? You see thought leader 3.0, a little definition might help us kind of frame what we're going to be talking about and what we're going to be thinking about, and hopefully what we're going to be doing to become a 3.0 thought leader. The next piece is why this even matters in the context of B2B, in the current landscape that we exist in today. Why does thought leadership matter, or why does this approach to thought leadership matter? So we're going to look at that. We're also going to give you a 6-step playbook that we've actually been helping our clients kind of work through to make their thought leadership a little bit more powerful, meaningful, and able to connect in a better way to their audience. And then, as I mentioned at the end, we will have a Q&A session. So I'm sure questions will come up. If you have questions, again, hold them to the end. We will get to them, I promise. So let's start with who this is for. The first person, or people I should say, that this is for is really going to be C-suite executives, somebody that says, hey, we have a vision that we're trying to take to the market. We're trying to make a change for our customer, and we need to be able to effectively communicate that to them. So the C-suite executive, whether you're going to be the thought leader or whether you just want your organization to be known for the thoughts and the ideas and the vision that you have, this is going to be a very good piece of information and a very good guide for your organization to follow. The next group would be subject matter experts. These are the people with the how-to knowledge, boots on the ground, real experience, especially in context of the customer situation. So subject matter experts are going to be not only valuable in the content that we create, but also understanding the context of why we're creating it and what it means for the organization. So if you're a subject matter expert, this is a good place for you to be. And the last group that should be here, marketing leaders, right? It's our job to capture this vision, capture this expertise, capture these leading thoughts, and get them in front of our audience in a way that matters, in a way that gains attention, in a way that they can resonate with, and in a way that allows them to view us as an expert in our space. Because ultimately, that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to put our ideas out there. We're trying to make it valuable, meaningful for our audience so that they start to understand, one, what we think and where we can add value. So the marketing team and marketing folks are going to be critical to capturing these messages, these stories, and then also helping to broadcast those into those audiences. So if you're one of these three people, you are in the right place. So let's talk about what a thought leader is in general. A lot of people stand up and say, oh, I'm a thought leader, or I'm doing thought leadership. And I think that definition is flawed, right? So just saying you're a thought leader, a self-proclaimed thought leader, that does not make you a thought leader. So we don't like to refer to ourselves as thought leaders. We can aspire to be one, but we do not assign that to ourselves. what we need is actually having ideas and thinking and content that we can put into the market that somebody could resonate with, that somebody could look at and say, hey, this is new, this is different, this is helpful to me, and I'm aligning with what's being said here, and I'm going to start following this more thoroughly, more clearly, more in depth. And at the end of the day, that's only going to happen if the thoughts that you're putting out there are worth following. So in order to be a thought leader, you have to have thought followers. In order to get actual people, specifically in your audience, that are willing to follow your thoughts, you have to be putting out content and thoughts and ideas that are worth following. So that's a big piece of this. If you want to be a thought leader, you have to be thinking something and projecting something that is worth following. Let's talk a little bit about the evolution of thought leadership. And, different B2B companies are going to exist in different levels of thought leadership, depending on your background, where you come from, history of the company, a number of different factors that may play into this. But when we look at thought leadership, I really look at kind of 4 different levels, right? The first one we're just going to call 0.0. And, there are companies that exist here, and that is companies that literally do no thought leadership. Some companies do zero content. And 0.0 is you do nothing. If you exist in this space today, if your company does no thought leadership, you have nothing of any kind out there to really connect to your audience and let them know what you think and how you help and the value that you could bring, that's okay, because today we're going to give you a way to change that and start down the process or the path of thought leadership. The next kind of stage is thought leadership 1.0. And I know a lot of companies in B2B exist here. This is going to be the companies that participate in trade shows and conferences and do speaking at those events. And those are really, really good activities to do, especially from a B2B standpoint. Obviously, it depends on the conference and the speaking opportunity, but it can be a very powerful way to connect with a targeted audience. But there are some downfalls to it, right? So there's a scalability problem. If you're waiting for that trade show, waiting for that conference, there's only going to be so many of those per year. You might have 2, you might have 3, maybe you have 1 every month, but that would still limit you to 12 opportunities per year that you'd be able to get in front of an audience. So you're somewhat limited in scale in the way that you could address that audience, but you're also limited in reach. You're limited to the people that are actually present at that conference or at that trade show. So there is a somewhat of a disconnect in that you aren't able to really get to your full audience. You're only able to get to whoever happens to be present. And for most of us, that's not going to be everyone in our audience. So we're limited in 2 different ways when we look at thought leadership 1.0. Which brings us to Thought Leadership 2.0. Many of you are familiar with what we're calling 2.0. It's going to be your classic content marketing efforts. It's going to be what I think a lot of people in B2B call thought leadership. So your blog content, your white papers, your research, your different components that you're getting with your subject matter experts. You're getting information, you're documenting it, you're creating content, and you're trying to get that into the market. This is a very positive way to start becoming a thought leader. Written content can be a great way to present your information to your audience, but like Thought Leadership 1.0, Thought Leadership 2.0 has some limitations. So you are heavily reliant on written content, almost exclusively. And written content has some limitations. It has some limitations in its consumption, and it has some limitations in its ability to attract attention. It also has some limitations in how and where it's used. You see written content used a lot on your website. So Your website is a great place for written content to exist for SEO reasons, but is that where you want to place content if your main goal is to have your thoughts consumed? Is your go-to strategy wait for someone to find you? If not, maybe your website is not the best place for thought leadership content to exist, or at least solely to exist. And then the next piece is, when we get into just the modern consumption of content, what is our audience doing? How are they consuming content? If we really sit down with them and ask them, are you going to our website to consume content, or are you in content arenas, social arenas, having conversations and discussions, sharing ideas on different platforms other than websites? And I think that if we're being honest with ourselves, that's what we'll find within our audience. And if you aren't sure, just ask them the content that they consume, ask them where they get information and where they interact. And you're going to find something that, well, the answer is not going to be your website. I'll tell you that. So the thought leadership 2.0 aspect is still relevant. We still need blogs. We still need white papers. We still need this type of content, but solely relying on written content, and specifically solely relying on website-based written content, is something that we're going to want to evolve from. And that brings us to thought leadership 3.0. So the big shift here is that we're going to move away from website-based written content, and we're going to move toward native content. We talked about where your audience naturally exists. If they're already there and they're already having conversations and they're already consuming content, the question for us is, how do we become a meaningful part of that conversation? How do we get involved in a meaningful way? And how do we start to get the attention and the mind share within those spaces? So that's really what we're going to want to be looking at. And the other piece is that we're going to want to do more than just have a blog post that has the name of one of our thought leaders. We want to get our thought leadership team and really from an executive level, from a subject matter expert level, included in not just the creation of the content, but actually being displayed and showcased in that content, and then even taking it all the way through the distribution of that content. So we want our teams to be a lot more active when it comes to thought leadership 3.0. The reality is that if we do this, if we can get our teams more active, if we can take the conversation or the content to where these conversations are already taking place, there's going to be a greater sense of authenticity. There's going to be real people talking about real things. We're going to be able to make it more scalable. So we're not going to have, oh, we did one blog article a week, I hope somebody reads it. We can literally produce content almost on a daily basis. And again, not just for the company, but also for the team that's going to be involved in that content as well. And then probably the biggest piece is that we're really aligning the content, the thought leadership content that we're creating, with the way that buyers are consuming content today. They're not necessarily going to websites, reading blogs, and downloading white paper, although that still happens. There is a massive amount of content that's being consumed in a different way that we're going to align ourselves to when we're talking about thought leadership 3.0. So what we're going to go over is a 6-step formula. This is the formula that we kind of developed to work with some of our clients and experiment with and see what works and how we can help them really move the needle when it comes to their thought leadership. So step one, before we start, getting out, hey, what content are we creating, or who's getting involved, or what platforms are we going to be on? Before we jump the gun to any specific creation of content or distribution of content, we have to know what we're talking about. We have to have a clear message, and it has to be a differentiated message that uniquely positions you in your market. If you want to be a thought leader, you have to have leading thoughts, and they have to be different than what some other people are presenting in your market. They have to be a standout thought to your audience. They have to really represent what you as a company stand for. They have to really almost change what your buyers believe. So we're trying to take a buyer from point A to point B in their belief system so that they can start to align with our beliefs and what we think, and then give them a reason why that matters to them. So once we've really defined that point of view, it gives us a launching point for all of our thought leadership. It should really be used almost as a North Star. So once we have this defined, we can kind of check our other content and make sure that it aligns with this particular point of view. And if it doesn't, maybe there's good reason, but generally speaking, our thought leadership should align to this point of view, because this is the change that we're trying to make in our audience's mind. Now, many companies that we work with anyway, when it comes to their point of view, it's a newer concept. It isn't something that they've sat down and thought about. They might have, some mission statements or some vision statements or some core values on the wall in their office. But this is a little bit different. This is really the point of view that you're bringing to your market as a whole. And your audience as a whole. So when it comes to your point of view in general, if you haven't developed a point of view or you don't have one that's crystal clear, that's okay. There's a little exercise that we work through with some of our clients to try and define, what is this point of view? How can we get closer? How can we understand what we represent or how we see the world needing to shift and what needs to be communicated to our audience in general. And a lot of what we do is we kind of go into the weeds and then back up and take a 30,000-foot view of what we've actually discovered. So we really look at a positive aspect of things and then a negative aspect of things to really figure out, where are we different? What are we saying that is resonating with our audience, to develop that overarching point of view for the concepts that we need to put into the market. So the first thing that we look at is needed beliefs. So hypothetically, if someone were going to align with what we're thinking, what would they need to believe? And those needed beliefs are essentially a system of things, and you can classify them, a system of things that they need to understand, or they need to have some level of belief in, to know that we're telling the truth and that we're having a level of thought that is worth following. So we can kind of document, what are the things that our audience would need to believe to have buy-in in a point of view that we would have. So you can literally sit in a room, brainstorm these things, do a little workshop with your executive team, your subject matter experts, and just say, you know what, if someone's going to align with the way that we're thinking, what would they first have to believe? And that becomes your needed beliefs. So just document all of those things. And, you're not looking for one thing. You're not looking for 150 things. You're looking for however many things make sense that someone would have to believe before they would be able to align with your way of thinking. So the next piece that you're going to want to document is your limiting beliefs. So what's preventing people from thinking what you need them to think? What is limiting them, literally? And sometimes it's, oh, hey, they, have an experience that limits them from that. Or maybe they just don't know about this way of thinking or this way of approaching it. So there's different things that can limit people's ability to believe the ideas that you're putting out there. You also need to document what those limitations are, or what's causing them to not be able to believe what you're putting out there. So all of these things are needing to really be documented in a way that you can say, hey, this is what we want everyone to believe, or this is what we need everyone to believe in order to align to our point of view, to really become almost an evangelist of what we're saying into the world. And then what's stopping that from happening? You take your average person from our audience. What are the things that they currently believe that prevent this from actually becoming one of their core beliefs, or something that they can actually get behind and potentially not just believe in, but even promote to others? So this is a really good exercise to document kind of the positive and the negative aspect of these things. And then what you get to do is kind of sit and take a step back. take your leadership team and your subject matter experts and say, okay, great, here's all the things that our audience would need to believe in order to align with our way of thinking, and here's all the things kind of preventing those things. And many times you can kind of sit back and say, okay, what's the theme here? What's the guiding principle that we're really dealing with, and how can that be formed into our solid point of view that we're going to use as that North Star? And I can walk you through a couple examples of kind of how we've done this with a couple of our clients. So here's a client that we have, J. Turner Research. They serve the multifamily industry. They do uh, essentially surveys. They do reputation management, all in the apartment industry. They have a software. So they're serving property managers, property owners, investment firms, things of that nature that are really concerned in the ownership and management of those properties and the satisfaction of those residents. So we went through and we kind of helped them with this process and documented what are some of the needed beliefs that people would have. So, if it's, reputation is going to be important, that the resident satisfaction actually drives the value of these properties, that a reputation can be managed, it can be improved, it can be affected by activities from the organization itself. So these are some of the beliefs that somebody would have to have before they could align with this company and align with what they're saying and what they believe in. At the same time, you take the limiting factors. What are some of the limiting factors that are actually causing their audience to not necessarily believe or not necessarily align with what they're saying? And, we looked at those as well. And, some people are saying, hey, reputation is cool, but it's too hard to track. And we can't do that. That's limiting belief. Or, hey, feedback from our residents doesn't lead us to an actionable next step. That's a problem. So we don't need this thing that you're talking about. So you kind of get the idea that we're looking at all the beliefs somebody would have to have and all the beliefs that would stop someone from following down the path of the way that we're thinking or our point of view for that market. We kind of document these, and these are just a few from the exercise that we did with them. And we ultimately come up with a point of view, which their point of view is that reputation is the most important multifamily business metric. And, this is something that they can actually prove and support from the different research and things that they've done. But, this is a little bit different. We talked about being a point of view or a position that's unique to you in the market. No one is saying that reputation is the most important metric in business. People are looking at revenue or occupancy rates or the total property or portfolio value. All of these are the most important business metrics, and all of those are fantastic. But what we found out is that the reputation of the residents at those properties actually determines your occupancy rate. It determines the property value. It determines whether you are going to be successful or not. So from Jay Turner's perspective, reputation is the most important multifamily business metric as it drives all of the other metrics. So, this exercise kind of helped outline how do we get to this unique point of view. Another example, effects management solutions, another company we work with. So they are in the large volume contingent labor space. So essentially you are a manufacturing firm and you're opening up a new facility or a new line and you need 100 new workers or 1,000 new workers. This is the company that can actually make that happen. So they aren't your traditional staffing company. They're not the guys to call when you need one or two people. They're the guys to call when you have hundreds or thousands of employees and you really need someone that can come in and not just help you recruit and retain these people, but help you manage and effectively utilize your workforce for production needs. So their needed beliefs in general is that they need someone to believe that exclusivity matters, that it isn't just another name on the staffing company roster. They need the idea of exclusivity to exist, and having one partner per market versus a list of staffing firms you could call is a difference maker for the actual company themselves. So it makes a difference when you dedicate, hey, we're going to put all of our eggs in this basket and we're going to dedicate to this company. So they need that to happen, and they need to separate them from the idea that you need multiple staffing firms in order for the company and honestly the approach to be successful. They put out there that production companies should be 100% staffed. Their belief is that there's no reason for a manufacturing company to not be 100% staffed at all times for all shifts. They need companies to believe that. They believe that temporary positions are not the way to approach the problem. So the CEO, he says you can't solve a temporary problem, or I'm sorry, a permanent problem with a temporary solution. So you have a permanent problem. You need people on your lines, and a temporary position, a temporary worker is not the solution to that. So these are beliefs that they have that affect their market, that affect their customer, that they need their customer to believe to align with their way of thinking. They also obviously have limiting beliefs that need to be knocked down. So, the customer comes in and says, we're never fully staffed, or it's not possible for us to be fully staffed. We've been in business for 20 years and we've never seen that happen. Okay, well, that's a limiting belief. We know that we need to get over that hurdle, or, we can't find qualified people. There's always a big story for, we're in a rural area and the people don't exist. They're not here. And, we've got 5 staffing firms and they can't get us the people. Therefore, it can't be done. Again, limiting belief. That's not true. It is something that we need to disprove in order for someone to align with our way of thinking. So for them, the point of view is that the traditional staffing model is broken. All of these companies are using the traditional staffing model, and all of them still have the same problems that they had the day before, the year before, the decade before. So traditional staffing can't solve the problem. It is a broken model. And in order to solve the problem, what you need to do is you need to adopt the idea of exclusivity in a partner that is as dedicated to you as you are to them. So basically, one client per market serving your need in both a recruiting, staffing, and then the management of the employees in that facility. So if they can align their audience to understand that the staffing model is broken and that there's a different approach, now all of a sudden they're on the same wavelength, they're on the same page, and there's buy-in in the core belief that they need their audience to have before they can start to believe in their solution and that there is a different and better way. So generally speaking, recapping that, we really need to look at whatever those needed beliefs are, whatever we need our audience to believe in order to align with our beliefs. We also need to look at the limiting beliefs. What is preventing our audience from aligning with our way of thinking? And then we need to zoom out and say, what's the pattern here? What's the theme? What is our overall point of view that we need to take into the market in our quest for thought leadership, our quest of sharing knowledge, our quest for changing minds into our way of thinking? Which brings us to step 2. Great, you have this wonderful point of view, you have some ideas, you want to take them to market, but in order to do that, you have to have a content team that's going to help you do that. So you need to figure out who's going to be on your content team. And this is going to go a little bit further than I think most companies have gone thus far. I think some in thought leadership are going to sit down with some subject matter experts. They're going to interview them. They're going to create maybe some blog blog articles based on those interviews, and that's fine. But we need to go a step further than that. We need to get a content team that's actually invested and involved in not only the ideation of the content or not only the outline of the content, but also in the production of the content and also in the distribution of the content. So when we say content team, we are not talking about the people that are just going to get together and brainstorm. We are talking about the people that are going to be involved from start to finish in the process. Now, one thing that I highly recommend, we want to be successful. We want to have an ongoing thought leadership program, and that's not going to happen if we bite off more than we can chew. So I highly encourage you to start small. Start with one thought leader, start with one executive, start with one subject matter expert. There are times when you can add 2 or 3. I'd say 3 is probably the absolute max that you're going to want to start with, just because it's going to be hard to manage in the beginning, your schedules and your time and how you're producing things and how you're distributing things. It can get overwhelming. And I'm actually going to show you an example here in a minute of just what it looks like when you have 3 experts at the same time. But keep in mind that the smaller you keep it to begin with, the more manageable it's going to be. If you start with one expert and literally one content strategist that can help think through the ideas, make sure you're hitting the high notes, make sure you're conveying the message correctly, plan out how it's going to be captured, how it's going to be broken down into content pieces, how it's going to be distributed. That is my recommendation, is to start small, because you can always get larger as you see success. But if you start too big and then it doesn't really work and it starts to fall apart and people start losing interest, you're going to find yourself struggling to continue to keep people involved. So don't start too large. Definitely start small, start manageable. You can always grow once you see success. And really focus on consistency. So, don't think of some super elaborate way that you could do this thought leadership thing. Like there's a a desire to be cool, to be out there and really do something impressive, and that's awesome. There's a time and a place for that. Don't do that when you're starting. Start for consistency. Make sure that everyone understands what we're doing, why we're doing it, their involvement in it, and that it's not going to be a one-time event. This is going to be something that we're going to do, whatever it's going to be, once per week, once per month, once per quarter, whatever their involvement is going to be. We need people to commit to the consistency, because it's consistency that's going to really allow you to make that impact. If you show up one time with one piece of content that is awesome and then you're silent after that, that's not going to really move the needle for you. You need something that's going to be, one, impressive from a thought perspective, but then also that is consistent out there in the market, that can be where your audience is and has a chance of being consumed by the majority of your audience. And the biggest factor that's going to play into that is being consistent. So make sure that whatever you do, keep it simple enough that you can do it consistently. Step 3, create video content. So we talked a lot about blogs and white papers and things of that nature. Obviously, we are a video-centric company. Of course, we're going to say do video content, but the reality is, if you look at the content that's being consumed today, the majority of it is video, and we'll kind of walk through why that is. So first and foremost, authenticity. There's a lot of content out there. There's a lot of noise, especially with AI getting involved. Anybody could crank out a blog article a day if that's what they were trying to do. And in some content, there is starting to be a lack of authenticity. In fact, I think we even saw it before AI was happening. There's people just trying to crank out content for content's sake, for SEO value, for whatever the reason. And there was a lack of authenticity in some of the written content. So when we include video, we're including a new level of authenticity. Not only are we showcasing the ideas and seeing the person, but we can actually validate that those ideas are coming from a human being that we can see and hear and experience. It's not just written down and claiming to be their thoughts. We're actually seeing the person that's giving the thoughts. So there's a new level of authenticity. People connect with people when they can see faces, when they can see eyes, when they can see emotion. It has a different way that it resonates with people, and it's more authentic. It's more able to be consumed in a meaningful way. So that's one of the reasons that we recommend video. Is just you get more personality, you get more people involved, and having that authentic nature to your content is something that's going to allow it to stand out, and it gives someone in the audience someone to attach to, someone to follow, someone to assign the badge of thought leader to. So when we're talking about becoming a thought leader or being a trusted expert, we have to know who is the trusted expert. Video gives that character, a persona on camera that your audience can connect with. The next piece is scalability. So when we look at any content medium, video is always going to be the most scalable content. So obviously you're going to have the video itself that, can be chopped up into a multitude of social media pieces, for example. But when you sit down with a subject matter expert and you go deep on a subject, sure, you might have gotten 4, 5, 10 different pieces of social video content out of that, but you also have a deep dive discussion into a particular topic. Take that video, have it transcribed, take that text, and you have the same information that you would normally have when you do a subject matter expert interview before you write a blog article. You now have a source that you can go to for your written content if you'd like. You can create blog articles out of that. You can create information that's going into your newsletter out of that. You can get inspiration for your next white paper or your next presentation from that content. So when you start with video, you can really turn it almost into any other form of content. Like we talked about, it can be video content. You can pull image stills from your video. You can produce written content. You can pull the audio and have audio content. So any other form of content can be derived from video, which makes it vastly more scalable than if you just produced a blog article, for example. And then repurposability. So video is great because you can scale it, but you can also reuse it. If you have, Susan, that you sat down and you went deep on this particular topic, and yes, you used it for social over here, you can also say, hey, let's also use that in that sales presentation that we're giving, or on our website on this particular page, or some other use in the future. So video content is reusable as long as you have an audience that the message is right for. That content can many times be used and reused, and the value of it gets exponentially greater as more and more of your audience sees that content. So video is very repurposable, which is something that we look at when we look at what's the correct medium for the thought leadership content that we're going to put out there. Another piece that we can't ignore is that social platforms are moving towards video in a major way. Obviously, Instagram has gone from a image platform to very much a video platform. The inclusion of TikTok is almost exclusively a video platform. YouTube, obviously, video platform. YouTube Shorts, video. LinkedIn, probably our crown jewel from a B2B standpoint of a social platform. It had a video piece. Well, now it's doubled down and it's added a complete video feed to their platform that they're actively working on, actively making updates to, and actively moving to almost a TikTok style video presentation within that platform. So the platforms that our audiences are hanging out in and consuming content in are taking a video first approach. So if we aren't taking note of that and planning to use video in the content that we're creating for our thought leadership, we're going to be missing out on our audience. Our audience is there, they're consuming content. And if we're not putting content in that arena, we're missing out on a major opportunity. When it comes to video content, I'd say probably one of the biggest questions, or one of the first questions we get is, oh, okay, we're bought in. We know we need to do video. what video content should we be creating? And many times somebody's going to say something like, hey, I see a lot of people doing a podcast. Is a podcast what we need to do? To be able to create enough content to quote unquote feed the beast. How do we create enough content to feed our social media channel or channels and potentially have content for our other thought leadership, whether they be on our website or at the trade show that we're going to be doing? How do we actually create enough content? And although I think, many companies would be served very well from creating a podcast, I think it's maybe not the best place to start. If you're failing ambitious, I think let's go. We can do a podcast. It can totally happen. It does take a different level of skill, of thought, of planning to make that be successful. But the companies that are ready for that, go ahead and start there. But if you're probably one of the many that say, hey, that seems a little daunting, that might be a little bit too much to bite off to begin with. I kind of want to dip my toe in the water. I want to see this thought leadership thing, but I don't want to make that level of commitment yet. There are other options that are easy from a marketing department standpoint, and also from a subject matter expert or executive standpoint that make it a little bit more tolerable to ease into, and maybe put the podcast on the back burner. Maybe that's step 2. So, if you're looking for how do we bring the intimidation level for our subject matter experts, our executives down a notch, and get them on camera, get them comfortable, get the process started, and then we can look at other opportunities down the line. I would probably look at doing something like a question and answer session with your experts. Sit down and ask them, what's happening in the industry? What's happening with the customers? What are you seeing? What's next? What are we working on? What change will that make for our audience or our customers? So just sit down and have some authentic conversations about what's happening in the day-to-day operation of our customer, of our industry, of our market, of the legislation, the government that's affecting, how we operate in our space. There's always a number of things that are going on in any given market that if you're sitting down with a true expert, you're going to be able to discuss in detail, in depth, and really uncover some solid gold that you'll be able to share with your audience and provide some insights. I think back to some of the conversations that we've had with our teams, and many times the marketing team will say, oh yeah, when you get Tim and Laura in a room and they start talking and start riffing about this and about that, I learned so much about the industry, and honestly that's where I learned most about what we actually do. It's that same idea. It's about sitting down the people that have those conversations and capturing it on video so that it can be shared with not just the people in the room, but the people in your audience in general. And that's really the key here. Another format to look at is frequently asked questions. Go get with your sales team. Go get with your customer support team. Get with your customers. Find out what are the questions that you have about the industry, about how we operate, about anything that pertains to our environment in general or our market. What are the big questions that we're dealing with? And then figure out who on your team from your subject matter experts can really answer that question thoroughly and fully. So this is more of the classic, they ask, we answer type approach, where you're going through and saying, hey, if somebody has this question, there's a good chance that more than one person has this question. And if we can be the source of the answer, great. That is a form of thought leadership. And that's something that we can do to kind of, again, dip our toe in the water, get our thought leaders used to being on camera, used to answering questions. And it's a way for us to kind of still add value to the market there. Another great one is going to be roundtable discussions. So, not necessarily just Q&A where we're just asking something, but this is more of a deep dive discussion where we can take some experts and say, hey, let's throw a challenge out there. Let's take a hot take and really dissect it. Let's take a challenge the market is facing now, and let's get some perspective on what should be done or what could be done. These type of discussions, as long as we're dealing with real experts, can be a wealth of knowledge because they can go really deep with each other. When an expert talks to an expert, they're not going to stay surface level and just assume that you don't know. They're going to go deep and they're going to talk about really, really intense aspects of challenges, problems, situations that will be literal content gold that you'll be able to capture and share with your audience. I think one of the other benefits of the roundtable discussion is the production equipment, the cameras, the whatever it's going to be can almost become out of sight, out of mind, because those experts are sitting around actually talking to each other and they start engaging each other and they forget that they're actually recording anything. So I think that's probably one of the more engaging types to start with. But regardless of which type you start with, the important part is just that you start. So, look at these formats, figure out, hey, what would be a good way for us to get our experts on camera? Where could we start? And don't feel like you have to be limited to one of these. There are other options as well. You could also do multiple of these options to create different looks, different environments, different formats that you would be able to test in your audience to kind of see what's resonating with our audience, and also what are our subject matter experts comfortable with. Where do they perform well? How do they shine best? So here's just a few formats that you can think of when you're thinking about getting started. When it comes to production, a lot of companies view the actual production of the video as a hindrance. Oh, we don't know how to do it, and we have to call in, experts, and it's got to be this big thing. And certainly that is one way to approach it. But the reality is, don't overcomplicate it. If you can't do that, don't let that stop you from creating content. We all have smartphones at this point. We all have a way to create content. So if you're saying, hey, I can't create video content, that is not true. That is going back to the original thing that we were looking at with a point of view. That is a limiting belief that you have that you need to break down. If you have a phone in your pocket with a camera, you can create video content. Do not let that be an excuse that holds you back. So there are companies that do it all themselves, that literally produce the entire thing on iPhones. And you know what? It is better than staying silent. It is better than just having blog content out there. It is a way to get it done, that if that's the only way you get it done. And honestly, there's companies out there that are dominating their conversation with nothing more than an iPhone. So that is a perfectly acceptable way to do it. You can also call in a content partner. So that's, the role that we play in a lot of the relationships that we have with our clients. They call us in and say, hey, we don't want to deal with the cameras or the editing or the video in general. We need you to do that. We'll supply the subject matter experts. You guys supply the lights and the cameras and the know-how there, which is what we do. Many of the companies that we work for or with take a hybrid model. So they're out there creating some things on their phones and then other things they create with us. And, it's kind of the hybrid approach. So you don't have to pick one or the other. You can pick both. And many times that creates a really cool dynamic way of presenting your content, because you've got, a more organic feel that feels more natural and more in the moment. And then sometimes you have a more polished look that can be for your more polished presentation or whatnot. So either way, there's not a wrong answer here, whether you're doing it all yourself, doing it all with a content partner, having a hybrid solution between the two. There's not a wrong answer, as long as you are creating video content. You're not going to lose. The only way you can lose is not creating the content to begin with. Step 4 is distributing the content. Great. We produce content. Now we have to distribute that content. We talked a lot about really being able to talk to our audience where they naturally exist, and that they don't naturally exist on our website. So in the B2B space, we have to look at where our audience is already active. For most companies in B2B, the primary place that this is going to be is LinkedIn. YouTube is going to be another great place that I think is probably ignored by companies and really shouldn't be. I think we're going to see a emergence of YouTube as more of a B2B content platform. But the far and wide, the king right now is going to be LinkedIn. I would say consider YouTube, but when you're just getting started, let's just pick a platform and say, this is where we're going to focus our time, energy, attention. We can always add platforms, but if we bite off too much, if we start playing in too many arenas, it's going to be very hard for us to, one, measure success and stay active at the level that we're going to need to stay active. So if our audience is on LinkedIn, let's focus on LinkedIn first and foremost. If there's somewhere else, then we might want to prioritize that particular platform to get started. Again, we already touched on this, but we need to focus on consistency. If we're going into a social environment, we cannot post one time per week, or if we're some companies, one time per month, and expect to have any meaningful change. Our audience is on these platforms on a daily basis. And if we're not contributing to that conversation and to the content that's being consumed, we're not going to have a very prominent place on the platform. We're not going to have a very prominent place in the content that they're consuming. And we're not going to have a very prominent place in their minds, which we need if we're going to be viewed as an expert in their space, or said a different way, a thought leader. So we need to prioritize the consistency of the content. We need to have enough content to be consistent. And we also have to focus on quality. Now, when I say quality, I am not talking about video quality. I'm talking about quality of the idea that we're putting into the market. So if we just manufacture some nonsense and put it out there to put it out there because we think we need to be consistent, that's not going to help us. Our audience is consisting of smart people. They're going to know if you're just bullshitting your way through it. They're going to know if you're just making something up just so you could say something. You need to have something real and meaningful to say. So not only do we need to be consistent, but we need to ensure that what we're putting out there actually has substance and meaning for our audience. One other aspect when it comes to distribution is how we distribute. So everybody knows, great, we can take our video that we created and we can put it on our company page. And that is an excellent way to do it. That is highly recommended, but it is not the only recommendation. LinkedIn is a person-to-person network. It's not a brand-to-person network. As much as we'd like that to be the case, it's just not. People are interacting with humans on the platform drastically more than they are with companies. So we have to take that into account with the strategy that we have. And our goal is figure out how do we maximize that reach. So on the company standpoint of things, we need our company to have an active role in this. We want to organically put content out there on the company page. We want more people to see it because, as I said, people aren't necessarily interacting with the company page the way they will a person. So we need to be able to boost the content that we're putting out there. So we're probably very used to using paid placement for our lead gen campaigns or something like that. We also need to think about using paid placement for our thought leadership content. So if we want our company to be viewed as an expert in the space and we've taken the time and energy and expense to create this content, it makes sense to make sure that people are actually seeing the content. So take our content and actually create advertising campaigns where we're hand selecting our audience, the exact people, the exact companies that we want to see our message and understand our point of view, our position, our ideas. This is a way that we can guarantee that those exact people are seeing it from a company standpoint. So taking a step further in our paid distribution from just, we're doing lead generation, and that's fine. We need leads. We're going to play at the bottom of the funnel. That's fine. But how do we play at the top of the funnel? How do we get people to understand where we're even coming from, to know that we exist, to understand our ideas, and to align with our way of thinking? That's where you can actually take your thought leadership content and you can pay for placement in front of the exact people that you want to hear your ideas. Now, we talked about LinkedIn primarily being a person-to-person network. So that brings in personal distribution. So we have this content team of executives or thought leaders. That's really cool that they helped us strategize the content. It's really cool that they helped us produce the content, but we also need them in the distribution of that content as well. And from a company standpoint, they are a representative of the company. So when they put content out there, it helps the company stand out and helps the company's perception as being a leader in the space or being an expert in the space. Obviously, if a company is comprised of a group of experts, the company will be viewed as an expert in the space as well. So what we're really talking about is we're capturing this expertise from our team. We need also their help in distributing that and positioning themselves personally, their personal brand, as an expert as well, not just the company, but them personally. So we want them to help us distribute that content on LinkedIn specifically. All of these experts, or I'd say the vast majority of these experts, are going to have a network of professionals and peers that they've built up over their career that the information that they're producing is going to be relevant to. So this is the thought leadership or ideas, their expertise on display that they're now putting out to their network. And when their network starts liking or commenting or sharing this, it is another way to expand the reach of that thought or the reach of that idea, and the ability for an audience to look at that person and say, ooh, I like this idea. I understand what they're talking about, and I agree with what they're saying. They are an expert in the space. So we're trying to maximize consumption. If consumption doesn't happen, you cannot become viewed as an expert. You cannot be a quote unquote thought leader. We need consumption to happen, and utilizing the personal networks of our thought leaders is one way that we can do that. And for the most part, this particular step is free. This is a organic way to get your content in front of tens of thousands, or if the network is there, many times hundreds of thousands of people without ever paying. This is the cumulative network of your subject matter experts, your thought leaders. It should be utilized when you're talking about thought leadership content, which we will take a step further. And there is a particular segment in LinkedIn, and it's somewhat newer, so some people don't even know that it exists, but it's called thought leadership ads. So when your thought leaders are putting out this thought leadership content, and hey, it's really cool that 5, 6, 7,000 people from their network saw the video that got put out there. That's awesome. But the question is, if that video is valuable, if that's something that we want a wider audience to see, how would we make that happen? And that's where thought leadership ads come in. So once someone on your team has posted a video or any piece of content out there for that matter, you can actually go into your advertising platform, and you can actually add that particular ad or that particular post to an ad. Essentially, you choose your network, you choose your audience, you choose who do you want to see this post, and you can actually send that in a paid placement to those particular people. So, when you're thinking about that, you're not going to want to just take the same audience and kind of blast it to everybody, but really figure out, as your thought leadership strategy grows, as your content team grows, figure out, hey, the messages that we're talking about, who is that relevant to in our audience? Who does that mean most to? Said a different way, who should hear this particular message? And you can literally build a custom audience for each individual thought leader or each individual message, if you wanted to make it hyper relevant and really control who is seeing what and when, and how do we, at the end of the day, how do we ensure that the right people are hearing from us at the right time and in the right way? So this is how I would look at distributing this thought leadership content. We are not creating this to just throw it up on our website and hope to God that somebody comes and consumes it. We are strategically creating it for placement in a place that we know our audience exists. We're maximizing the organic aspect of the content, both from a company standpoint and also from a expert standpoint. And then we're utilizing the tools that we're given from a paid placement channel, both on the company and the personal side, to ensure that our audience is seeing the content that we're actually producing. And that's how we maximize that distribution. And that's how we ensure that our audience is actually consuming the content that we're, again, taking the time and energy and expense to create. So just running through an example. So this is one of our clients. This is Effects. We looked at them earlier when we were talking about developing a point of view. So their starting point, they really developed two podcast type approaches right out of the gate. We helped them to do that. We've got one that's with the CEO, and that's the gentleman on the right there, and he has a very different way that he views his market. That's drastically different, honestly, than their customer base is used to. And it's a message they need to hear before they could ever align with what that company needs them to believe. So with him, we're literally sitting down. It's more of a question and answer session, but it's going through and taking a deep dive into the methodology and the why and the how this should be thought of, and really allowing people to bridge that gap from where they are today and what they believe into the needed belief arena of where do we need them to get before they're going to be open to our ideas. So for him, we're bringing him in and we're walking through these different aspects from different angles, really, so we're not just saying something once, we're saying it multiple times, and honestly, we can't say it enough times. People need to, almost for lack of a better term, be beaten over the head with concepts, and you need to think of different angles and different ways to say it, so that one of the times that they're listening to it, they're like, okay, I get it. I understand. Most people are not going to understand a completely different way of thinking the first time they hear it. So you have to kind of be creative in how you present those things. That's what we're doing with him. On the left-hand side, we have kind of the number 2 and number 3 at the company, the chief administrative officer and chief operating officer, who literally deal with the day-to-day operation within that company. They're dealing with the operations. They're dealing with what's happening at the client sites. They're dealing with new clients, new challenges, onboardings, things of that nature. So they have a very hands-on experience with the subject matter and with the actual things that their client is experiencing. So they are sitting down and we're kind of teeing up a discussion. So you're almost having like a roundtable type discussion of, hey, here's a challenge that we saw at one of our clients' sites. What did that look like? And then how did we help our client get over that particular challenge? And how might that be useful to other organizations? So we're not just pie in the sky theorizing what should happen. We're actually showing the application in real life at real facilities that they work with, to help people not only understand how they apply their methodology differently, but also to give valuable insights of how some of these companies could make improvements and could solve some of the challenges that are happening on their production lines, in their facilities, in their processes, with their people, whatever it might be. So the idea here is, let's get 2 different formats of content happening, and let's create a multitude of content. And for them, they're busy. They don't have time to, sit down and do, a weekly podcast. We're actually doing it quarterly with them. So once a quarter, they're coming in and we're doing 6 different topics with each group. So 6 with the CEO, and then 6 separate ones with the 2 other individuals. And they're going through and working these out. The sessions are, anywhere between 15 and 30 minutes, depending on the topic. And then what we do from there is look to create short form social content that can be used in a social environment. So, from each quarter, the collective of the 2, we easily produce over 150 different pieces of social content on a quarterly basis. So over the year, we're just in this format, we're actually creating over 600 pieces of content that could be actively used for their marketing purposes in the realm of thought leadership or displaying their expertise. Now, No, obviously that is a lot of content. When you're thinking about, oh my goodness, I've got 600 pieces of content. Are you crazy? What would I possibly do with that? Keep in mind that we are not just talking about a company. We're talking about the thought leaders themselves. So we separate out that content and say, hey, thought leader 1 has these clips. Thought leader 2 has these clips. Thought leader 3 has these clips. So there's this separation of who's saying what. And from that, we're able to actually say, let's create content calendars that kind of intermix the conversations and the formats and the discussions and who's on camera, so that we don't just have one look or one idea that's going out there. We have a multitude of ways that we're actually presenting this type of content. So, most companies, when they think about this, they're going to say, great, we're going to make all the content, we're going to shuffle it together, we're going to throw that up on the company page, and that's what's going to become our content calendar. And although that can be done, it can be effective, it can work, like we talked about before, there's a better way and a different way that we're approaching it with them. So we have multiple thought leaders. We have true experts in their space that are drastically different in idea and approach than their competition. So actually getting them to highlight some of these ideas is going to be in our benefit from a reach perspective, but also in our ability to effectively communicate to our audience that we are experts in this space. It is not a faceless company. It is a group of experts that are leading the charge for this new way, in this case, of dealing with workforce management or staffing a labor intensive workforce. So we're looking at a company calendar, yes, but we're also saying, how do we take each one of these thought leaders and give them and build up their calendar with content that they are creating every now and then, maybe intermixing content that they've created with each other, or taking, an idea of one of their other colleagues and boosting that within their network and maybe giving their own 2 cents on that as well. So we are not ever just thinking about a company calendar. We are thinking about our entire content team and how we're going to maximize our distribution, not just to get it out there, but also to build these individuals up to be go-to experts within the space, to be eventually known as thought leaders in the space. Step 5 is measuring, right? We, especially in the marketing crowd, we say, oh, great, this is cool, but how are we going to measure this? This is not going to be measured in the same way that you're used to measuring, a lead gen campaign. You don't have the same goals. Obviously, lead gen campaign, you've got lead is your goal, or potentially, if you're more sophisticated, potentially closing to revenue is going to be the goal. But here our goal is actually consumption. We want people to be aware that we have these thoughts. We want people to consume these thoughts, and we want people to transform their thinking into our way of thinking. So our main goal here is going to be a consumption metric. And there's a number of ways that we can really start to measure this. Some people are going to say, hey, these are vanity metrics, and don't get caught up on whether it's a vanity metric or it's not a vanity metric. No one metric tells you the story of what's happening, but they can all be indicators of what's happening. So we're really looking for indicators. We're not trying to pat ourselves on the back. What we're doing is we're looking for what is working, what is resonating. So first and foremost, easy if we're putting content out there. Obviously, impressions is going to be one of the core metrics we want to track. How many people are we even having the opportunity to present our idea to? And that's what impressions is going to give you. It was at least presence in somebody's space, and they had the opportunity to consume that content, to consume that idea. The next one to look at is engagement rates, right? If people are consuming the idea, is it hitting home? Is it being effective in changing the way that they're thinking? And some indicators that we can use is, are people liking this? Are they taking the time out of their day? And it's not a lot, but are they taking the time out of their day to hit the little thumbs up button or one of the other available options to tell us, hey, I've consumed this and I agree with what you're saying, or I like this, or I support this in some way? Are they sharing it with their audience? If they said, man, this is
this is a thought that I can get behind. I'm willing to share this with my audience. Are we encouraging or are we achieving shares from our audience? Comments. So not everybody's going to agree with us. It's great when somebody comments, oh man, this is great. I couldn't agree more. Love that. But you're also going to have to be open to the fact that not everyone's going to agree with you. Negative comments can come in. They're going to say, oh, well, that's BS because of this. Well, you have to be able to respond to that. Keep in mind, you're not necessarily responding to that person. You are responding to your complete audience. So you can realign them. And it's an opportunity to realign maybe some of those limiting beliefs back to your needed beliefs, back to what you need people to believe. So it's an opportunity for you to be challenged. It's also an opportunity for you to realign the way of thinking of not just an individual, but everybody watching. But regardless, those comments, as they come in, are engagement. It means people are consuming that content. And honestly, the more likes, shares, and engagement that you're getting, the more of a network effect you're going to experience, specifically in LinkedIn. So if Bill, your old colleague from past company, comes and likes your post or shares your post, comments your post, these are all opportunities now for Bill's network to see your post. So the more engagement we get, yes, it is an indication of people consuming the content, but it's also an opportunity for us to increase our overall reach for that content. So we want to track that metric. Average watch time. If we're talking about a video, we want to look at what's the average watch time for that video? How long are people watching this piece of content? Are they watching to the end or not? Are they consuming the first 2 seconds and then they're out of there? So are we creating content that people are able to actually consume, and at what rate? So our goal would be to increase the average watch time over time. And it could be a matter of what person is on camera. It could be a matter of how we started the video. It could be a matter of the format of the video. It could be a matter of a number of things, but really taking note of what that watch time is and trying to make a hypothesis about what is causing this to be higher than that, and really start to judge what's resonating with that audience. If you're talking about a paid placement of sorts, specifically a video, you can look at hook rate and hold rate. So hook rate being your video views that watch your video beyond 25% of the length of the video compared to, the total audience that started that video. So how many or what percentage of our audience is watching to at least 25%. So did the start of our video, did the hook of our video capture enough attention to keep them at least that long? And then hooking is great. Holding is better. We want to hold that attention of that person so that they actually watch our entire video. The longer they watch, obviously, the more absorption they have of the idea that we're trying to put out in the world. So it's important to hold people as well. And that's where a hold rate can come in. You can really look at how many people are viewing our content at least 75% of the way through. So these are metrics that can be gained from software. They're in your LinkedIn account. You can pull these, you can document them, you can track them, and you can start to figure out, are we being effective at reaching our audience? Are we being effective at engaging our audience? And are we being effective at getting them to consume the message that we're putting out there? Because at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to influence their perception of us as an expert or a thought leader if they're not consuming the content that we put out there. So these are great metrics to really start to understand, are we being consumed? Are we being effective at reaching that audience in a manner that allows them to really connect with our ideas? You should also be measuring softer signals, more qualitative signals, not software-based metrics, but more of the personal metrics that will come up. And there's different ways that this can be tracked, but I would recommend getting some way to include this in there, because if all you're going is off of what software tells you, you're missing a large piece of the puzzle. So, on your lead gen activities, you probably already heard add some kind of self-reported attribution, ask some people in an open field, how did you hear about us? If you're doing this correctly over time, you're going to start to see people from your audience say, oh, I heard about you from LinkedIn, or I heard about you from YouTube, or I heard about you from this particular place where you're placing content, or maybe even by name. Oh yeah, I saw John's content on this particular subject. Okay, great. These are indications that not only are people consuming the content, but it's actually moving them in the direction you want them to move, because you're actually capturing this further down the process, and actually as an intake to a potential lead. Another piece is first person feedback. So when your content team starts to get involved in creating this content and putting it out there, distributing it on these channels, they're going to hear from people. They're going to be at a networking event, and they're going to, run into that person they know, and they're like, oh man, I've seen that content that you're putting out there. That's great. Or maybe someone they don't know is going to walk up and say, hey, are you the guy that's talking about this? That first person feedback means that people are paying attention. There are a lot of lurkers on LinkedIn. Not everybody that is watching is going to like your post or comment on your post. Most people won't. Most people will observe and move on. So this first person feedback gives you a sense of, are people consuming the content? Is it resonating? What's happening there? And, from your content team, make sure that they're ready to have those conversations, and, really ask, hey, what did you find valuable? Where did you see it? How did you see it? How much have you seen it? So we can gain some feedback on what is happening from our audience's perspective. Direct messages. So sure, people might comment on our posts, and that's great. But if something's resonating with someone, or someone sees a way that you might be able to further help them, there's a good chance that they might reach out via a direct message, or add you as a connection. Both of those are metrics that you want to look for, because it means that people are starting to not just resonate with what you're saying, but they're starting to view you as an expert. If they're reaching out to you to ask for help in some way, or ask for your advice in some way, that's an indication that they view you as an expert. If they're connecting with you or following you, that's an indication that they're viewing you as an expert in that space. So that's definitely something you're going to want to look for. Also in your sales conversation. So be sure to loop your sales team in, let them know what you're doing from a thought leadership perspective, let them know the messages you're putting out there, and let them know to have conversations around, hey, have you seen any of this content? Have you heard this perspective? Because they can get an idea of what's driving some of the motivation from the prospects that they're working with. And for some, if we're doing it correctly, it's going to be the content that we've put out there, and it's going to be the ideas that we've instilled into the marketplace. So figuring out a way where sales can have those conversations and ask about, have they seen these messages or not? And if they haven't, that's okay too. Maybe it means that we need to just make some tweaks on the other side of the distribution aspect of things. But if they have, that's awesome. Now we need to know, how did that influence the way that you think about this particular opportunity to buy, this product or this service. So understanding how the thinking that we're putting out there affects into a buying process is also effective. So getting our sales teams knowledgeable about what we're doing and ready to potentially have some of those conversations can be a good way to track your success as well. Last step 6 is adjust and scale. So we're doing a lot of measurement, but what are we going to do with that measurement? So our goal here really is to evaluate our performance. And this is not just so that we can report it up to the C-suite. This is so that we can improve what we do over time in a multitude of ways. So there might be a certain topic that we focus on that gets more attention than others. There might be a different expert that we use that, maybe they're more out there, more active, more energetic. Maybe they get more attention, that we need to include them in more things. Maybe there is a certain format that is resonating more with the audience than, maybe another format. So we need to pay attention. Where are we gaining traction, and where are we falling flat? And our goal over time is to increase where we're gaining traction and decrease our efforts and our activities and our investment in time in things that may not be working so well. So over time, if we're tracking those things, moral of the story, do more of what's working and less of what's not. Additionally, once we know what's working, once we can say, hey, we've got a baseline for the content, we have a baseline for our team, we have a baseline for the distribution, we know that we have a good starting point. Now we can start to scale. Maybe we need to add someone to our content team, or add a new format to the content that we're creating, or maybe create a new distribution channel, or maybe expand our paid efforts within one of our channels. So once we know what's working and how it's working, that gives us the opportunity to start to grow and start to scale. But we don't want to do that before we have a baseline of what we have been achieving, so that as we scale, we have a metric that we can hold ourselves to, that we're saying, hey, this is the line we want to go up. We're making changes to improve these metrics. And as we scale our team, add new formats, add new topics, add more budget, add whatever it is, we want to make sure that the trend is actually trending up for the things that we are calculating, and not down. So once we have those metrics, our goal in step 6 is, what change are we going to make into the future? Because this is not a one and done activity. This is something that your organization needs to be doing for forever. There is not going to be a time in the future where you're not going to want to be viewed as the go-to expert in your space. So this is a perpetual activity. And this is how we're going to not just measure, but make meaningful adjustments to that content, to that distribution, to even the ideation of the content and the topics over time, so that we can continuously improve our ability to reach our audience in a meaningful way and bring them over to our way of thinking, and elevate our experts and our company into that coveted space of thought leader or expert within our industry. So the core takeaway here is, if you're not doing thought leadership already, if you're in the thought leadership 0.0 crowd, you have some work to do, but it is not too late. You can still make the move. If you are in thought leadership 1.0, doing, kind of the conference and trade show and public speaking thing, awesome. That is an awesome way to do it. If you graduated to 2.0 and you're doing content marketing, blogs, and different aspects of written content or website-based content, that's something that you should probably keep doing. But now you have an additional aspect of thought leadership to consider, of how do we actually go to where our market exists, where they're consuming content, and really be part of their daily lives to change their minds and display our expertise and align them with our way of thinking. So thought leadership 3.0, that's really what it's all about. Going through our framework, knowing your point of view, clearly defining that point of view, building the content team, the team that's going to think about the content, the team that's going to create the content, and that will distribute that content, is going to be essential for this process. This is not something that the marketing team can do by themselves. We cannot assign blog articles and they go in a corner and just somehow make it happen. This is a team effort. This is a team sport, and we need people to be bought into the value of this. We need to create video content. Video is going to be the king of this thought leadership content, and it can be used, as we discussed, to create other forms of content down the line, but starting with video is going to be your best starting point. Your distribution, really capitalizing on the social network of video, and also the way your audiences are already consuming content. Thinking about a social distribution strategy first from the company and from your team is going to be critical to that success, both from an organic and a paid perspective. Measuring that success, we give you a number of ways to measure success depending on the content, depending on the platforms. There may be some additional ones that you want to add to that. And then over time, based on those measurements, adjusting and then scaling your efforts so that you're constantly improving and constantly getting your ideas into your audience the way that they need to be. If you do that correctly, you will achieve expert status in your market. You will have a elevated position. You will be viewed as the expert. Your team will be viewed as an expert, and you will literally be leading the conversation in your market. And that's really what it's all about. You do not want to just be a viewer of the conversation in your market. You don't just want to be a participant in the conversation in your market. Preferably, you want to lead the conversation in your market. Okay, that is the end. I know that is a lot of information, but now I would like to open it up for Q&A. I know everyone will not be able to stay for the entire Q&A. You may need to get to other things at this point, but I did want to open it up for Q&A and give you the opportunity. If you do need to take off, feel free. My email's on here. My LinkedIn is on here. Feel free to connect with me or email me. I can answer any question one-to-one after this, but now I will be taking a few questions before we wrap this up. So we have a question. You mentioned limiting beliefs when forming your point of view. Where's the best place to source those? The sales team. So limiting beliefs can come from a number of areas. You really do need to talk to people that are really one of three people. The best place is always going to be your customer. And I'm sure if you're in marketing, you're tired of hearing talk to your customer, but that is truly the best way to really figure out what are the limiting beliefs around your category of things or that exist within your market. That's going to give you the best first person view of those limiting beliefs. And I would start there. Another great area, as was mentioned, is the sales team. Go to the sales team and say, hey, what are the objections that you hear? What do people say that you have to overcome in the sales process? And that's a great source for limiting beliefs. Another one, and probably the last one, is going to be your customer success team or customer service team. Many times, even the people that have bots still have limiting beliefs about the way things work or should work. And they're going to be hitting customer success with some of those questions and some of those hesitations about what they should or shouldn't be doing. So sometimes limiting beliefs can come from that as well. Another question. What if our subject matter experts are uncomfortable being on camera or don't see themselves as thought leaders? They should not be viewing themselves as thought leaders. They should be viewing themselves as experts. They are or should be experts. They represent the company. They represent your position. They represent the change that the organization is trying to make in the world. And they are experts in their space. They've, in most cases, dedicated their lives or their career in this space. They have knowledge that other people don't, or at least they damn well should. And that makes them an expert. It's really just a matter of how do you get them comfortable on camera to display their expertise. And, we mentioned a number of ways that you can go about, starting off. It doesn't have to be something crazy. It doesn't have to be a big Hollywood production that you're inviting them to. It can be something pretty basic. It can be something pretty secluded. It doesn't have to be a big production team or, again, anything crazy. You know your people, their level of comfort. I would advise, coaching them ahead of time that this isn't life and death. This is just you talking about what you already know. We don't need to prepare. We don't need to memorize scripts. We don't need, to be calculating things on the spot. We're literally just going to have the same types of conversations and share the same type of information that you might if you were in front of a customer or potential customer. Keep in mind, these are the same people that we put in front of customers. These are the same people that we take to trade shows and talk to prospects. These people are able to have conversations and have knowledge that is considered expert knowledge or that has expertise in it. Adding a camera to the equation does not change that. We are only trying to capture the expertise that they already have so that it can be shared with someone beyond that one prospect or that one person at a trade show. This is a way to take our information and share it to many people. And that's something that we all need to keep in mind, including our experts, when we're creating this. Another question, our executive are stretched thin already. How do we get their buy-in for a thought leadership program? That is a wonderful question. That is the biggest objection that we hear, which is, oh, our CEO doesn't have time. Our thought leaders, our executives, our whatever it is, they don't have time. And the reality is, you can't let time be an excuse. This is not something that takes hours per week. It doesn't even have to take hours per month. As I mentioned on the example that we gave, the example specifically, we're dealing with a company that does probably hundreds of millions in revenue, very, very busy people. Do they have time once a week to come in and sit down in front of a camera and do this? Absolutely not. So it's structured in a very strategic way where it happens on one day per quarter. And yes, executives are busy, but if they can't spare 4 days for content creation per year to address their entire market, something's wrong. I'll tell you, usually what's wrong is they don't want to be on camera. So going back to that comfort level, you need to ease into that and explain to them that we're not doing something big here. We're going to do something small to start with. But I don't have time is an excuse to not participate. And in my opinion, it is a faulty excuse. If you are an executive, if you are an expert, a subject matter expert within that company, and you don't have time to share your thoughts, your ideas, your perspectives with your audience, I think you're doing a drastic disservice to your audience, and you're probably not the representative that your company needs. So don't let time or the excuse of time get in the way. Find out what it really is. Figure out what time they could commit and start to use that time for that content. So everybody has some amount of time, even if it's, hey, you know what? You need to come in an hour early to get this done. If they can't make that sacrifice, there's something else wrong. Got another question. My boss is afraid of negative feedback and comments on social with thought leadership content. How do I handle that conversation? This is going to be different for different organizations, but these are the conversations that are happening no matter if you're involved or not. From my perspective, it's better to be involved. And honestly, it's better to have these conversations in public, unless there's something you truly don't want to talk about, which, like I said, different industries, different things. Some of them have legal aspects that need to be considered as well. But the reality is, when you're sharing your thoughts out there, do you really want to have a bunch of thoughts that are not challenged? I can tell you, if you have thoughts that are not challenged, there's a good chance that you are not having leading thoughts. Leading thoughts are usually not the thoughts that everyone else has, and it sure as hell is not going to be the thoughts that your competition has. So you very well may get somebody that's disagreeing with what you're saying, and it can be looked at one of two ways. You can say, oh, that's terrible that we got disagreed with. They didn't just automatically agree with what we say. And that's one approach. And I think that's a victim's approach. That is what is going to, I think, prove that maybe your position isn't solid. Maybe you don't really think that. Maybe there is doubt. Maybe there is reason to have a limiting belief. Or you could look at it as your opportunity to do one of two things. Either disprove that negative comment. Someone comes and says something and it's wrong. Well, now you have the opportunity to show the audience how and why it's wrong and why your perspective is correct. So that's the first opportunity, but there's another opportunity, and sometimes people don't like this one. In fact, I don't like this one sometimes, but it does happen of you're not always 100% correct. If you put an idea out there and somebody, finds that piece or that angle where it doesn't necessarily fit, or maybe it isn't 100% applicable, and they point that out and they're right, that's an opportunity for you to be the leader and expert that you are and say, you know what, you're correct. I haven't thought about it like that before. What I'm saying works in this instance, but in the instance that you're saying, I need to change my perspective a little bit to account for that. And here's how I see that. So there's a big opportunity, I think, to one, if they're not correct, prove to the audience that they are indeed incorrect. But if they are, it's an opportunity for your perspective to grow, for you to grow as a professional, and for you to share that in real time with that audience. And there's no shame. In fact, there's no shame in being wrong. Having a perspective and putting it out there from time to time, you will be wrong. It is part of the process. And it's part of the conversation with your market, which is what you want. You want to be having the conversation with your market. You will not always be right. Not all experts are always right, but they still participate in those conversations. And that's what we're looking for. And that is the goal of what we're doing out there. So negative feedback, negative comment. The reality is, don't worry about it, but be prepared for how you might handle it. I will say there will be negative people that will just say stupid things out there. Don't acknowledge that. Just say that's very nice. There's a time and a place for that. Maybe not on this professional network, and let them make themselves look stupid, or for that matter, just don't even respond at all. So you get to choose how you respond. It depends on, the comment that you're having, and how your organization wants to handle that. But don't let what somebody might do or might say be a limiting factor in the content that you put out there, or your willingness to participate in those conversations. Awesome. Thank you. So, I don't see any additional comments, and we are definitely over time. So I am going to wrap this up. I think, again, if there are additional questions or comments, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Feel free to shoot me an email. I'm here to help anybody get started in this process. If it's, you just have a quick question about, how you would start to form your point of view, or maybe how you would put together a production kit, or whatever it is, just let me know. I'm here to help. Ultimately, I want all of you to be comfortable to take that leap from, thought leadership 0.1 or 2.0 into thought leadership 3.0. So anything I can do to help, please let me know. Appreciate all of y'all for being here. Your time and attention is appreciated. And hopefully this gives you a new tool in your arsenal to go out there and make a bigger splash in your market, gain more attention, gain more authority, gain more trust, and ultimately gain more customers. Thanks, everybody.